So I'm telling you, if you implement just a couple of these top 10 ways, you're going to probably 2 or 3x your volume, your listing volume, your deal volume, just if you learn how to do creative finance. The number one way is actually not a reason, it is a mindset, and it's about setting the proper expectations with yourself.
Welcome to the Boise Reen Show, your destination for creating wealth through connections in real estate and business. Are you looking to become a real estate professional? Do you want to start your own successful real estate business? Well, I'm your host, Matt Osanicki. Join us as we learn from the brightest minds, industry leaders, and experienced professionals, equipping you with the knowledge and confidence needed to make informed decisions and thrive in the ever-changing real estate landscape. Your journey starts now. Welcome back to the Boise Reen Show. I'm your host, Matt Osanicki, and today we've got a very special guest, Ryan Weimer, with us, who's going to break down creative financing. Now, why do I say creative financing? Well, I know a lot of you out there are thinking in today's market, it's so hard to buy a house. The cost of living is so high. How can I invest in real estate? How can I invest in my family's future? This is impossible. The bubble's popped. The housing market is crashing. Today, we've got Ryan Weimer to break down all the things that he does to make his investments happen. He loves helping people. He loves coaching. He was honored to be a guest here to share his knowledge with you guys today. He's gone from A to Z and Z back to A. So without further ado, Ryan Weimer, can you just bring people up to speed a little bit about yourself as we dig in?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. I am stoked to be here, especially after the meetup last night. For those of you that were not there, man, that was dynamite. I had a great time. One of our acquisitions agents actually he came straight to the meetup with a 0% interest creative finance deal, like literally right from the seller's house, signed contract. So that was pretty cool. If you guys missed that, we shared a lot about how to do that and answered a lot of questions. But a little bit later in this episode, because I want to bring the value, I've got the top 10 ways to find creative finance deals in this market. So we're going to go through all 10 of those on this episode. First, I would say, starting out, I was a W-2 employee. So my background's in engineering, and that journey just wasn't really cut out for me. Like there was always, it took me multiple years to figure out what it was that I was never really satisfied, like in my corporate job. And I could never really put my finger on it. I started, one of the big breakthroughs for me was I started reading So Good They Can't Ignore You by Cal Newport. And I started thinking, the whole premise of the book is doing what you love is a fallacy. Like, because there's so many people out there that it's like, well, I want to be a yoga instructor because that's what I really love. It's like, well, you can't just go be a yoga instructor and have the rest of your life like made for you, right? You can't achieve true time freedom and do the things you want to do by just deciding one day that you want to be a yoga instructor the rest of your life. Instead, why don't you become so good at whatever it is that you're doing that it inevitably buys you freedom, more freedom in the job, more time freedom, whatever, to be able to get financially stable and then have the ability to do the things that you actually want to do. So, yeah.
So was creative financing like always your path forward?
No, never.
Never your path.
No. So in the early days when I was working as an engineer, I was like, how can I got passed up for a promotion. And that was really what set me off, where I was like, I'm not in control. I was in Taiwan working at the time, actually. And I was there for 6 weeks, and they were like, it was the week before Thanksgiving. And they were like, hey, the project's not done. Like, you have to stay there for Thanksgiving. I was like, I've already extended twice. I've been here 6 weeks. Like, I'm not staying in Taiwan for Thanksgiving. Who knows what they even have for Thanksgiving? Do they have cat? Do they have dog? I'm just kidding. But no, so that was kind of the breaking point where I was like, there's got to be another way. There's got to be a way for me to actually control what I want to do instead of having it controlled for me. Because
you were just a number.
Yeah, that is exactly what it is.
Yep.
You just, in that moment, you're like, okay, they really don't care about me at all. I am just a cog in the wheel. Yeah.
Yeah, we were talking about this earlier, but It's crazy to think that some people live their life, their day-to-day 9 to 5, which is great. There's a lot of careers that you're supposed to do that. Like take lawyers, for example, doctors, for example, pilots, for example, you have to do that day-to-day stuff. But then it's like you're almost living an alter ego life when you're thinking about home. What am I going to do at the end of the day? What am I doing this weekend, And before you know it, time passes you by and you get passed up for a promotion and you get called in and you miss your kids' birthday parties and
Yeah, holidays, weekends.
yeah.
Like they would say, "Hey, we need you to fly to South Korea in 48 hours." I was it's like, "Okay."
Yeah.
I was in my late 20s, so I enjoyed traveling for a while, but it's like, man, if you're making those kind of sacrifices and then you're not getting what in the corporate world you perceive as being rewarded for that in terms of a promotion, then yeah, you're going to start to get frustrated and get burnt out and look for other options. So that's when I found real estate. I found Bigger Pockets, and that's when I bought my first rental property here in Boise. So, but to go back to the too good they can't ignore you, the whole reason I was able, and then I worked for 3.5 years as an engineer while doing real estate on the side. So I double dipped for a long time because my engineer brain was scared of, jumping full in. Some people can cut cold turkey. That is not me at all. Like I had to make a very mathematical equation on when I quit and went into real estate full time. But my early years in that engineering job gave me, like, I worked so hard that my managers didn't micromanage me because they knew that I was just going to get everything done on time. And so it got me a lot of freedom. I was flying around the world and the demands were high, but the so good they can't ignore you, I had built up a lot of inherent trust and freedom. So during lunch, some days I would take a little bit longer of a lunch and I would cold call. Some days I would, go home early and I would cold call. Right.
I want to put this into perspective a little bit because I know me personally, I get shiny object syndrome sometime.
Yeah.
I see something on a reel or a YouTube video and they're like, do this, you're going to make a bunch of money. Like this is all you need to do to replace your income,
Yep.
And I personally feel like you're like the embodiment of what that looks like. But what people don't understand is how long it takes to get there, the sacrifices you have to make. You've got a big team. You've got proven systems and processes. You've got people who entrust in you and count on you to do all this stuff. And because of that, you're able to help others find the path. And I think that's one of the biggest reasons why we want to have you on today is to find that path and talk about these humble beginnings, because it takes that 3.5 years of sacrifice. If I wish you would have brought that equation with you on how you quit your job.
Yeah.
But maybe we could get into that a little bit. But yeah. And furthermore, I love that you talked about being so good they can't ignore you, because I can relate to that as well. Being so good that they trust you with your time to manage your time appropriately at work. And it's not like you're trying to steal from the company or anything, because you've got 10 widgets that need to be done. Who's to say that, it takes the entire 40 hours that week to do those widgets? If you could do those widgets in 38 hours, that saves you 2 hours to make your cold calls. So when a lot of people are talking about, I don't have time to do this, you have to take control of your life and make the time. That's the point. That's
100%.
What being an entrepreneur is.
100%. So I would actually notice, people talking around the water cooler and doing these things, and they were on their phones a lot of the workday, and it's just not an efficient use of your time. So yeah, I could do in 25 to 30 hours what somebody there would do in 40 hours, right? So it's not that I'm not getting my work done. It's that I can do my job a lot faster and more efficient and effective than other people if it's very intentional.
Yeah. Okay, so your brain snapped
Yep.
on this isn't for me. I can't believe I'm not in control of my life like I thought it was going to be. And then you found Bigger Pockets.
Mm-hmm.
So you had to put your brain to work somewhere. Like, real estate is going to be my thing. Talk us through what that next step of real estate looked like for you. You bought a rental property. Was that what you were going to do? You were just going to own a bunch of rental properties?
Yeah. So zooming out, because I actually want to touch on what you said previously about the amount of time that this takes, that the lens of that context is really important, right? So being an overnight success often involves a decade of failure and working through it or more, right? So from the time that I first discovered real estate and started listening to Bigger Pockets to the time that I actually bought that first rental property was a few years. I had analysis paralysis. I was scared of making the wrong decision. It was a big financial commitment. You know, what can go wrong with the tenants? All those fears, right? And then after that, it took me 3.5 years after that of doing both the real estate and engineering to then replace my income that I was making in engineering by wholesaling, by doing real estate full time. So from the time I first discovered real estate until when I actually was able to quit and do it full time, it was about 5.5, 6 years. So that's not overnight.
It's
right?
not
At all.
It takes two things. It takes commitment to something and then the consistency to do it for a long enough period of time.
Yep. You nailed it. So what did that look like after the first rental property? Which I bought off the MLS. The first two were off the MLS, and then I discovered, hey, by going direct to seller, you can actually find way better deals. You can control the terms. You can, there's no realtor involved, so that saves money on commissions. I've never had my license or been an agent, so for me that was like, well, gosh, if I make $150 cash flow a month on this single family, how many of those would I need to quit my job? It's right. My engineer brain, like, okay, I need this many properties, and how long is it going to take me to get there? And when people say wholesaling, because I do want to touch on that, it gets a bad rap, right? Mm-hmm. Wholesalers, and for good reason. There's a lot of wholesalers that start out, they have no idea what they're doing. They get properties under contract, they can't close. They put people in bad situations. They cancel on the day before. You always hear those horror stories, right? Or they're sending out bad deals. But when we talk about wholesaling, it's really just the art of finding discounted properties. That's really what wholesaling is. So that word gets confused. Wholesaling is really the exit strategy, but it's truly just the art of finding discounted properties. What you do on the back end, whether you keep it, flip it, actually wholesale it, develop it, whatever, is up to you.
I like how you say the art of finding discounted properties, but just thinking in my head just now, it's not necessarily discounted properties. It's the art of finding people who have pain points and problems that they need somebody to help them with.
Yes.
Not somebody who's gonna, not the wholesaler rap that you're talking about as far as getting a bad rap.
Yep.
Of people canceling and treating it giving people bad situations. It's actually helping people.
Yeah.
The wholesaling part is just after it. It's how you exit the strategy.
Yep. And that's something we live and breathe now is we are looking for people with problems. So anywhere from 6 to 8% of all homeowners or property owners in any market are distressed. That's a lot.
That's a lot.
Tens of thousands of people in Boise, right? So I don't think people really understand like the sheer magnitude of that. So when we say, yeah, we're going to do over 100 deals this year, and in a year and a half from now, we want to be doing 300 deals a year, we're not even close to the ceiling of how many deals are out there. So I hear everybody that's like, my market's saturated, there's too much competition, there's no deals. No, you just have to put in the boring work to get the deals. That's it.
And today I've noticed as a realtor, I've seen more for sale by owners, seller financing, literally put out on a Zillow listing.
Yes.
It's unreal.
Yeah. But it really does come back down to if somebody doesn't have a problem, we're not the solution. Mm-hmm. You're never going to, guys, if you feel like you're convincing somebody to sell their property at a discount, we're not convincers. We're not convincers. We're deal finders. We're problem solvers. We're problem finders. So it is finding somebody with a problem. If they don't have a problem, they should list it with an agent. They should sell conventionally. Right?
That's such a much better way to put it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really gives it actual context. Okay, so I want to back up a little bit. You were talking about how you had your first couple rentals, you had to buy so many, and like that was going to be my financial freedom.
Yep.
And I want to drive home the importance of that because you have to take action to learn it for yourself. It's one thing to listen to it on Bigger Pockets or to listen it on the Boise Reen Show, to hear you say we're doing 100 to 300 deals a year. That's one thing, but it's another to say, I'm just going to do one and I'm going to learn along the way. Don't get too crazy with it. Just figure it out for yourself. And correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like you did your first couple of deals and probably thought to yourself, Okay, I've got this under control. I know how the process works. Can I find a home for cheaper now? Can you walk us through how that of buying a few properties led into this creative side of doing more wholesaling and problem solving?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a confused mind says no, right? So if you don't know how a property closing happens, what kind of money you need to bring to closing, the documents you have to sign, how long it takes to get a renter in there, what your actual cash flow is going to be, not your spreadsheet magic, right? We all get in love with spreadsheet magic. Well, if we just did that, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if we just did that, we could get this much of a return,
Yes.
right? You find yourself doing those things. And it's really just about the evolution of, okay, I've got the basics covered. What's next? I've got the basics covered. What's next? And I spoke about this at the event, but where most people go wrong is they just have the wrong expectations for themselves starting out, and they think it's going to be easy to find a really good deal, and they sabotage themselves. So it's all about stacking small wins and stacking your personal confidence, right? If you tell yourself, I'm going to go to the gym 4 times a week and work out because I'm serious about my physical health and that's really important to me, and then you don't do that, what are you telling yourself? It's not really important to me, right? So it's the same thing with, I don't care if it's 1 hour a week that you're dedicating towards your financial freedom, towards real estate, whatever it is. If you're doing that 1 hour every week, you're telling yourself that that's important to you. And then the next week it can be 2 hours. Then the next month it can be 5 hours, right? And you're chalking up those small wins and you're telling yourself, this is in alignment with my why. And now let me go further in, further in, further in. And then you can do more. You can buy more deals. You can do all that stuff. But really, it's all about a mindset, and it's about your own self-belief and outworking your self-doubt.
Yeah, I like that you did the exercise analogy as well, because you have to exercise your brain muscle too.
Yep.
It takes action. It takes consistency. You have to do it for a long enough period of time. And once you start to see the gains, if you will, it starts to get more addicting and more fun. You feel comfortable with what you're doing, and you can explore new options. This show would not be possible without the support from our local community. Because of you, we're able to share information from leading professionals like never before. That's why our sponsors at Boise Turnkey Investments and Your Stay B&B have teamed up with the Boise Reen Show. Whether you're just starting out or you're a seasoned pro, they help bring you all the insider information to get you started on your journey today. Back to the show. Okay, so we talked about being a W-2 employee. It took you 3.5 years to quit, but in the meantime, you built time into your schedule to make this happen because you knew this was your path forward. You decided, I'm going to take action. This is what I'm going to do. It works for me. Other people might do more than I do. Other people might do less, but this is what works for me. You identified that. How do you go from there to quitting your W-2? And what did that look like?
Yeah, I think on a high level, it either requires a massive amount of pain or a strong enough why. So if you don't have pain or a really strong why, you're just going to stay and keep doing what you've been doing your life, the rest of your life, really. So I had enough pain, thankfully, to thrust me into that zone of being uncomfortable to start taking action for myself. Because I'll tell you that, like those first couple cold calls that I did, I'm sweating, I'm shaking. I'm an engineer. I don't cold call strangers. Are you kidding me? It's hard enough for me to ask a girl out on a date.
Right.
Come on. Right?
Yeah.
So, but when you do it, and then you do it again, and you do it again, and you hear a lot of no's, and you face a lot of failure, you start to build up calluses, and you really start to grow that confidence, right? And so I think for me, that avenue was cold calling, and this is what I tell people that are really serious about, or say they want to be serious about doing off-market deals. The best way to learn is cold calling. It's free. It only costs you your time, because you're gonna. And we'll get into the top 10 ways to find creative deals here shortly. But one of the ways to get a lot of reps in and learn how to talk to sellers and the right questions to ask is just through cold calling, right? And facing that constant rejection.
Yeah. One thing that reverberates and it repeats itself over time of all the people I talk to is having the ability to be a good salesman, to talk to people, to be an active listener. So for anybody out there that's listening, if you're in a job right now and you're talking to a lot of people, you're communicating effectively, like you already have a step up in the game from other people because you're so good at speaking with people. You're so good at listening to people and hearing their problems and trying to help them and adding value.
Yeah, I can tell you personally, getting a bit vulnerable here. Like even cold calling isn't just a way for me to find deals. It's also a way for me to grow personally and to have better conversations with my spouse and my family and my friends, and ask the right questions and use the right verbiage and use the right tonality and be genuinely concerned.
Yeah, as a W-2 employee, I remember coming home and bringing work home
Right.
and just cussing and, oh, this happened and I was so stressed, and like your family doesn't want to hear that, you know? But to have your why aligned with your life and your family, I can see why that's so important to people now. So important.
Yeah, and if you, for the people out there that are like, well, I don't really have a lot of pain, then you need to go through some really critical exercises to find out what your why is. And you need to map out, where do you want to be next year? Like, what do you want? What is missing from your life that you really want? And it might not be what you think. It might not be, well, I have a 1,000 foot, I have 1,000 square foot, 2 bed, 2 bath, and I want a 3,000 square foot, 4 bed, 2 bath, right? Well, why do you want that? Well, it's because I want to bring guests over and be an entertainer and have a safe place for my kids to be. Okay, so really what you're seeking is more of a sense of community and building memories, right? So
Yeah.
you got to go a layer deeper than like the surface value of what money gets you, because what money gets you is time, freedom, and impact.
Impact is huge. And I
Yes.
feel like not a lot of people talk about that. Everybody wants to say, well, I want freedom. I want to walk away from it. There's no walking away from it. It's active, no matter which way you slice it. And having impact, I think, is one of the biggest things entrepreneurs enjoy, is impacting their community, helping others, and building something that matters.
Yeah, and even now, I mentioned this at the meetup, but we only close 1 out of every 7 or 8 sellers that we meet with. So what happens with the other 6 or 7 people that we meet with that we're not the right solution for? We've helped countless of owners of properties through problems, even if we're not the ones that make a profit from it. And having that genuine sincerity of a core value of adding values to others, people can feel that. It's genuine, it's sincere, it's real. We've helped 4 or 5 people this year alone save their property from foreclosure to keep their house for free, because we actually want to do that, right? We actually want to help people and serve the community and all the things that come with that, because the feeling of giving is so much, it's just the coolest thing. Like, that is the real reason that I love entrepreneurship and love being a business owner, is impact. And then, of course, with money being a vehicle, people say money doesn't buy happiness. I think people that say that haven't given enough money away yet.
That's a good point. Yep. Man, we're supposed to talk about creative financing, and here
Let's
we
do
are
it.
going
Yeah.
deep.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so a question I get a lot. We heard it last night at the meetup, and for those who are listening, Boise Reen also runs meetups, connection activities. We all get together, so come hang out with us whenever you want. We're always out doing something. Find us on the Facebook page. And one of the biggest things that I took away from that was actionable or tactical steps that people could take to these cold calls. And I imagine you're going to get into that with some of your top 10 ways to do it. So can you give some of the listeners here who don't know what they're doing, like some actionable items that, like, hey, I can do that?
Let's do it. So number one, it's actually the number one way to find creative finance deals in this market. And actually, just let me give the context, because it'll drive the point home before I give the top 10. Right now in the market, right, we've seen an insane amount of appreciation run up in the Boise market from 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021. And then when interest rates doubled, right, everything's comes crashing down. And so now we're in this weird state of very low inventory, record low listings since we've even tracked that. And people are struggling about how to get deals done. Whether you're an agent, whether you're an off-market investor, creative finance is something you have to have in your tool belt. 70% of homeowners have a mortgage at 4% interest or less. 70%. So what is their motivation to move? They're going to move into half the house for double the payment? No. So there's very limited options for these people to buy and sell homes. And so you have to know why creative finance is relevant in today's market. It's because we've got 28, 29, 30-year notes at these low mortgage rates. How are people going to be able to afford to get into that next house? So that's why this is really important, especially if you're an agent. The day of cash only deals, those days are behind us. So I'm telling you, if you implement just a couple of these top 10 ways, you're going to probably 2 or 3x your volume, your listing volume, your deal volume, just if you learn how to do creative finance. So the number one way is actually not a reason, it is a mindset, and it's about setting the proper expectations with yourself. And that's where I see most people go wrong, which is why it's number one, is they think that they're going to call in a couple people and they're going to all of a sudden find somebody that's going to sell them, 0% finance, $0 down, and everything's going to be hunky-dory. It's not. It's going to take hundreds of calls. You're going to have to learn things on the fly. You're going to have grit. You're going to face rejection. So number one is by getting real with yourself and telling yourself this is going to take a long time. That's the number one way to find creative finance deals. It's longevity, so you don't burn out and you don't give up. That's number one.
Everyone despises no's, and before you know it, they give up. Is there any way you combat no's, or how you like to?
I love this subject. So yeah, you have to gamify it. So in our company too, whether we do call-a-thons. So we do a fun thing with call-a-thons where we have a magic word and we spin a wheel to see who gets to come up with a magic word. Bojangles, Krispy Kreme, like whatever it doesn't matter what the word is. And whoever says that in the most seller conversations in that 2-hour block wins like a $25 Amazon gift card, right? And that's our way of gamifying cold calling and making it fun. They'll be talking to a seller and just say, yeah, and Bojangles, what has you looking to sell the property?
Do you want to sell right meow?
Exactly.
Yep.
Another way, when I was just starting out and it was just me, it was 450 no's to get a contract. So I literally kept a tally, because you hear 5 no's in a row, 10 no's in a row. That feels super overwhelming, right? You start celebrating those no's. Yes, another no closer. Yes, all I got to do is get this many more. Another one. Then you start going for no. You start celebrating for no. You trigger your subconscious mind that no is a good thing. And that's how you trick yourself into really just keep doing it. Stay the path. It's just a numbers game. So those are a couple of ways that we like to gamify things that are good examples.
Love it.
All right, number two is relationship capital. So I talked about this last night, but now whether it's an agent, a broker, a friend, now is a really good time to cash in your relationship capital. What I mean by that is, are you adding value to others without asking for anything in return? Because the best leads are referrals. They're free, right? So really all they cost you is your time. If you don't have any relationship capital built up, then it's time to go start seeking people that are doing more than you, whether you're an agent just starting out, who's doing 5 listings a month that you can go do the grunt work. You can go put the sign in the yard. You can go, if you're a wholesaler just starting out, who is, can you go knock on some doors? Can you generate some leads for somebody that's doing more deals for you, just so you can plug into their world and learn? And that is a big thing that I see is people have a scarcity mindset in what can I get out of this instead of a true abundance mindset. And it's a big mistake, because by having a big abundance mindset, adding values to others without asking for anything in return, those people want to help you all of a sudden. And then you save years of struggling through it yourself. You save years. What do years cost? A lot.
Yes.
Right? Time is our most precious resource. So number 2 is relationship capital. Number 3 is driving for dollars. So relationship capital, I know that's a longer term play, right? Something that people can do that are listening to this right now is go jump in your car, drive around, doesn't matter what the asset class is, apartments, self-storage, single-family homes. Go check out properties that have a hole in the roof, have an overgrown lawn, have junk cars in the driveway. Write down that address and then go online. Our favorite skip tracing service that we use is Lead Sherpa or Skip Genie. We can put those in the show notes, but you can get the phone numbers of that owner and you can call them. And you can say, hey, I drove past the property and I'm here in Boise or wherever I am, and I just wanted to see if you maybe thought of considering selling that property, right? And just that question alone, you're going to hear a lot of no's. But if you get a list of 500 or 1,000 of those, there are multiple deals in there. I guarantee it. Even now, our best performing list after all these years is our Driving for Dollars list because it's unique to us.
Yeah.
Right? Nobody else has it.
I got to be honest, on the way driving over here, I was doing that because we got diverted by construction. And I was like, I've never been down this road. And the road we went down had these amazing views. And I was like, I'm going to pick out one property here that is distressed or has a for sale sign or something. And there was one, but it was already undergoing a rehab. But I was doing it. So you've got Car University, where you drive around listening to podcasts and education, stuff like this.
Yep.
You could also work during that time too.
100%.
Driving for dollars.
Yep. There's virtual driving for dollars too. It's not quite as effective. I've noticed Google Maps only updates depending on what pocket or neighborhood you're in every couple years sometimes, right? So you could go on Street View on Google and like click through the neighborhoods and see which ones might, but it's not really as accurate as actually driving the roads. But so that's number 3. Number 4 was actually how I got started. This was looking up Zillow for rents and Craigslist for rents. And you're not just looking for any kinds of properties. This is free, by the way, right? This is free. These are already listed. They already got the phone numbers in the ads or emails. You just reach out to them. So you look up the properties that are not top of the line, right? Not the nicest top rent stuff. It's the median price point and below. And you look through the pictures maybe a little bit and it's dated or it needs some work. Anything like those, whether it's listed by a property manager or listed by an owner, you just pick up the phone and you say, hey, I'm a local investor and I know that they have this property listed for rent. If you're talking to a property manager, if you're talking to the owner directly, hey, I know you have this property listed for rent. I was just curious if you'd ever thought of selling it. And you have that curious tone, that voice inflection where you're just being super curious, you're going to strike up a conversation. If you go in, hey, would you take a cash offer for your property? You're going to get hung up on, right? You got to have the curious tone. And you're going to have a conversation and see. And again, it's just a numbers game. You're going to need to call in a certain amount of those to get a person. You know what? I would. And that's where you're going to find a lot of tired landlords because those are people that have not fixed up the property. There's a reason why it's listed and it's not rented. It's because it might have some stuff wrong with the property. They might be older. They might be looking for, hey, you know what? Let's upgrade you from a landlord to a lender. Let's get you that mailbox money that you've been wanting. Oh, you're looking to retire soon. Okay, let's talk about that. Well, if you sold this cash, gosh, how much are you going to pay in capital gains taxes? Okay, well, what if there was a way that we could save you quite a bit of money? I mean, it could be even hundreds of thousands of dollars by selling on terms. Okay, now we're getting somewhere, right? So there's a lot of tired landlords out there that, yes, they're getting that rent check, but now with the market softening especially, I think we're up close to now 5% vacancy in the Treasure Valley, which we haven't seen. It's normal, right? But
right.
During COVID, we had 0 almost. So there's a lot of people that have had their properties listed for rent for over a month. Those are really, really good candidates of people that are like, you know what? We're entering the holiday season. I'm out. I just want to get my mailbox money.
I love this technique because they're already investors themselves. They already halfway get it.
Yes.
And they still want to bring in a check every month. Creative financing is the best option for them. They probably love this. Are you telling me I get to offload my house at higher than market value and I get to collect more money than what I was receiving in rent and I don't have to do anything?
So before we get to number 5, let's talk about that concept really quick. The reason why somebody would sell a property on terms is because you can pay way more money to them over time than a cash offer, right? If someone's property is worth $250, as an investor, you're not going to be able to pay $250 for a cash offer. You lose money. right? You got closing costs, you got money costs, you got realtor fees and commissions, you got, any repairs that are needed. Yikes. You're in the red. Okay. So your cash offer is probably going to need to be around 170, 180 to really like make the numbers work after all the fees and stuff. Okay. So in the seller's mind, that's a $70,000 discount. That's a lot. Okay. So how do we close that gap? Have you ever thought about selling on terms? Well, what are terms? Well, gosh, it doesn't sound like the cash offer is right for you, but what if there was a way that we could make you way more money over time? What if there was a way that we could make you way more money over time? Okay, now you got my attention, right? Now I got that curiosity. Now I can actually explain what that looks like in payments over time. Because if then we can pay 250, we even paid over market value for properties, right? Because we get long enough terms, we don't care. We're making the monthly payment, right? So we could pay 260 for a 250K market value property. So that's the value to sellers, is that they can make way more money over time versus a cash offer. And the reason why it's relevant now more than ever before is because during COVID, everything was a bidding war and everyone was getting cash, over asking. That's not the case anymore. So I wanted to make sure that we covered that, because I know there's going to be people that are like, why in the world would somebody ever do this? It's because they can make more money over time. And if it's $50,000, if it's $100,000, that's a lot of money.
Especially if they want to cash out of it.
Yeah.
And they still want to collect it over time. A tired landlord, other than tired, there's a lot of people out there in the same situation. It's a great opportunity to cash in at the highest the market's ever been for them.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. All right. So let's get to number 5. Number 5 is foreclosures. Foreclosures. They've been completely extinct.
They have
the last
been.
few years, right? So
it's been a while since I've heard that word.
Yeah. They are not even close to actually near historic norms. Because when you think about what happens with capital markets tightening and interest rates rising, it takes quite a while for people to get behind on payments. And especially in Idaho or whatever your state is that you're investing in, it's very important to know your state-specific foreclosure laws. So in Idaho, it can be a 6-month or longer process. They have to be 3 months behind before they even get served a notice of default. So it's 3 months before they even get a letter in the mail like, hey, you're behind. You got to do something here. Then it's another 3 months before they even get the notice of trustee sale, when their auction date gets assigned or their trustee gets assigned. And then depending on who the trustee is, who's an actual attorney. I know I might be speaking in complicated words or anything, but basically a trustee is just some attorney that is now in charge of, appointed by the bank, that's in charge of getting the bank the most for the property. And so they use these auction services like auction.com to actually auction them off. So we got 3 months before they even get a letter, another 3 months after that before they get served the notice of trustee sale. And then depending on the queue of work at auction.com or when they can get it on the docket to do, it could be like another 3 months after that before it even gets auctioned off. So you're talking about 9 months from the time that somebody misses a payment potentially to when their property gets auctioned off. We've seen properties that people haven't made a payment in over 15 years. Yeah. They're called zombie foreclosures. Yeah.
I've never heard of that.
And then there's banks that are really dialed in that like the day. So when it's that first 90 day, the letter's out, the next 90 day, the trustees assigned, and then the next week it's on the auction calendar, right? And everything in between. So there's a huge amount of variance, but because I know I'm long-winded here, but to bring it back, we're not even yet to a normal market conditions amount of foreclosures, but they're starting to come back. And everybody now that's in foreclosure does have these 3%, 2%, 4% mortgages. And so they make great sub-2 candidates to take over those payments because you can't get those kind of mortgages anywhere else. So even if they're low or no equity situations, they can still be profitable and you can still do the deal that way.
You were the one, I think, telling me that the 2 to 4% mortgage rates were, because there's so many of them right now going through COVID, that it's an entire different asset class in and of itself.
Yeah.
You could build a portfolio of 2 to 4% mortgages.
Well, and that's the thing that I don't think people realize right now. There's a lot of fear going on, right? Are we in a recession? Are we not in a recession? What's going on? Are interest rates going to go to 10%? The only guarantee in town right now is a 30-year fixed mortgage. So the asset is no longer the property, it is the note, it is the mortgage. And so if you're getting a property now with 2%, 3%, 0%, I mean, we send out deals that are sub 2% interest for 28, 29 years all the time. It's impossible to lose money on that. It's impossible. So you want a guaranteed way to build wealth. Learn how to do creative finance. And if you're an agent, learn how to do creative finance so that you can get listings.
Just to correlate a little bit, the reason why it's impossible to lose on those is because the interest rate that you're paying is less than what our normal economy inflates every year.
Yes.
So it's like you're earning money just by having it.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you think it's because it's a hedge against inflation.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So if inflation even now is what 3 or 4% is what they're telling everybody it is. If you,
it's like 8% right now.
Right. Well, it's coming down.
It's coming down. It's coming down. Yes.
Yeah. Hopefully.
Hopefully.
Yeah. No, it's a hedge against inflation. So every year, if things are costing 4%, 5%, 7% more, your mortgage is staying the same every single year.
Yep.
So in 10 years from now, you're going to have the same payment, yet a gallon of milk is going to be $6.
So what is it you're doing with foreclosures then?
So foreclosures are great sub-2 candidates.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're actively getting on like auction.com or making these phone calls to trustees and trying to help these people not get foreclosed on.
Yeah. So I think we could do a whole episode specifically on foreclosures because there's a nuance to it. But typically people are in foreclosures, obviously from financial distress, and they're typically no or low equity situations. So that's why they can't, most of the time, if they listed it on the market, they would have to bring cash to close that they don't have. And so they don't have any other options other than a short sale, or they just lose everything. The proper way, though, to approach someone in foreclosure is, hey, I'm here to actually help you keep your house if you want to. It's not, hey, you're about to lose your house and everything you own. Here, take this cash offer. That's where everybody gets it wrong, because these people are getting called by hundreds. As soon as they get that notice of default, it's public record. So they're getting called by hundreds, called and texted and emailed by hundreds of people every single week. So a lot of them don't even have their phones on anymore. So we do some door knocking, and our whole goal is to let them know, like, we're here to be their advocate. We're not there to take their house from underneath them, but they're going to have their guard up because they have all these people calling and texting them, and it's going to feel horrible. And they're in a very stressful time in their life, and we need to be an advocate and a resource for them to help them. So that's where people get it wrong, is they go into foreclosures and they actually like asking for the sale right away, and you actually have to do the opposite.
I love that, because really they don't know anything about real estate. And because they're not making payments, the bank's going to fix the problem for them because they don't know what their options are. But if they have an advocate talking to them and letting them know, hey, you do have options. There are things you can do.
Yeah. And guys, you can look up Offer Now Idaho on Google and see our 5-star Google reviews. We have people that literally say, we had a woman a couple weeks ago. Her auction was tomorrow. She didn't even know that her property was being auctioned off. We see that all the time. Yes, I know it's absolutely shocking, the stuff that you see and hear. But we were able to save her property, and we didn't buy it. We didn't make any money off of it. We just helped her keep it. So that's about having meaningful impact in your community. So foreclosures are going to start kicking up. We're not going to see this mass wave of them like what happened in 08 and 09. Our inventory is still way low. There's not going to be a massive event that floods inventory into the market. So for all you people saying, I'm going to wait for a crash, guys, you're going to be waiting forever, because it's going to take some kind of catastrophic event for the marketplace to be flooded with all this kind of inventory, and the labor market's still strong. So moving on to number 6, social media. Social media. So how can people get you deals or help you if they don't even know what you're doing? And I'm a culprit of this, of being shy, ashamed, maybe even on social media, like not having self-doubt. Like, I don't want to brag about myself or talk about myself. That's uncomfortable. Who's going to get value from this? There's people that are doing way more than this than I am. Nobody's going to find value in this. What are people, and ultimately it's that you care about what others think about you, and you have some insecurities that you need to deal with. But if you're not loud, then nobody knows what you're doing. So, that's how I found Corby Goad, who's a Boise Reen member, was on Bigger Pockets, which is more or less a social media platform where he was answering questions to people. And I was like, who is this guy? He knows a lot. He's giving free value. That's how I found him. So whether it be people that we're hiring into the company or deals that we're doing or people that we're working with, social media is a massive juggernaut. There's infinite scalability, infinite reach. It's free. And I'm telling you, I don't care if it's your first time picking up the phone to talk to a seller or you've never done real estate before in your life. There is something on social media that you can talk about that somebody else would get value from, and somebody out there is waiting for that piece of content that'll change their life. It's true.
Especially if you're passionate about it.
Yes.
And you enjoy it. You can definitely give value back. That's the best part. And then it helps you find your why too.
Yeah, absolutely. So whether it's you're looking to raise private money, you're looking to hire an employee, you're looking to tell everyone, hey, I've got a property that I don't really know what to do with, or we do listings of these kind, like get loud on social media. That's another great way to find creative finance deals. We've made a couple posts recently where we've said, hey, we work with sellers in difficult situations. We have some different ways we can structure deals. Reach out to us if you know of anything. And people do.
Yeah.
You can get deals that way.
Yeah. Drive for dollars.
Yep.
Make a great list of all the great properties that you found and called on, and then present it to social media. You're the one that's bringing the value, saying, I found all these great properties. Does anybody want to partner with me?
Ooh.
Boom.
And nobody does it.
I know. Yeah. Yeah. And you could do it right now for free.
Yeah, absolutely.
And make lifelong relationships because of it.
Let's roll into number 7, which is getting lists online. So the best list for creative finance deals, we already talked about driving for dollars. We already talked about foreclosures. It's actually the no and low equity lists and tired landlords. We talked a little bit about tired landlords, but the no and low equity lists, you can actually go on various websites, download a list of properties that compared to tax assessed value have an estimated amount owed on the property, because a lot of that is public record. And those properties that have 10% or less in equity, if they listed it on the market, they would walk with nothing, right? Because after agent commissions and fees, let's say the property is worth 300 and maybe they owe 270 on it. They're probably not going to be able to list it conventionally, right? They're going to be stuck. So those no and low equity lists are really, really good for creative finance deals. Everybody wants to target the high equity lists or the out-of-state landlord lists. Those are good, but specifically for creative finance deals, those no and low equity lists you can get. So you can go to like a list source, a PropWire, PropStream. Those are all really good sources to get lists of what kind of sellers would do a creative finance deal.
I like that one because the last creative deal I personally closed was a property just like this. They had low equity in the property, but they needed a down payment to get in their next property. And that down payment was minimal because they were moving into it themselves. So it was owner occupied. So they didn't need much. But if they didn't do it creatively, they couldn't afford to move to their next house.
Yep.
So we gave them a very low down payment, and they gave us terms on what the house was worth. And it was a win-win for both sides because they just wanted to move on to the next house and we were shopping for a property.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. There's so many opportunities like that out there.
Yeah.
So many. So number 8, expired listings. Expired listings are fantastic. Even properties that are active on the market for more than 60-ish days. We always get deals from expired listings. Where people go wrong, and I know a lot of agents call on expired listings because they're looking to get the listing, but they're not asking the right questions. So the right question to ask is, what were you not able to get on the market that you were hoping for? That's the question to ask when they answer the call. Hey, I noticed your property was listed. What were you hoping to get? What didn't work out? Right? And that's a very open-ended conversation to get them to start talking about things. We, unfortunately, because not that many people or not that many agents know about creative finance, we find that a lot of times when people even make creative finance offers on the MLS, they're not even presented to their clients. Agents don't even present them to their clients. I think mostly because they just don't understand them, and they're complicated. And A confused mind says no, and that sounds like more work. So we're just going to wait for a cash offer. But we've talked to many people that we've gotten after it's an expired listing. And we're like, hey, we tried to talk to your agent before, and they were like, what? They never said anything to me about that. And it's like, okay, well, yeah. So that there's a big opportunity there to maybe talk about why they're looking to sell, because if they don't need all the money up front, then we always say there's only 3 reasons why somebody wouldn't sell on terms. They're doing a 1031 exchange, they need a lump sum to pay off debt or buy a new property, or they just don't understand it.
And the don't understand part you can help them with, right?
Absolutely. Yep. All right. So we got 2 more, last 2.
Yes.
All right. Number 9 is probate attorneys, disaster cleanup, lenders, and sellers that you've already bought from. Especially that last one, sellers that you've already bought from. It's so funny. Like every couple months, we're like, have we talked to so-and-so? They said they had like a portfolio of properties and we bought one from them a while ago, and you like don't even think to go back to ask them again. Hey, do you know of anybody else looking to sell a property? That's a big one. Lenders. A lot of times people go to a lender, like a conventional lender, because they're looking to get qualified to buy a new house. Well, what happens when the lender says, hey, sorry, you don't have a W-2 job, you don't fit into this nice little tidy box that we have, and now with interest rates really high, sorry, you're out of luck. You don't have any options, right? What happens to those people? Well, if they're in a situation where they need to sell, or the property's in bad shape and they don't have the money to fix it up, what are they going to do? They're going to be stuck in that property, and their situation's only going to get worse and worse, right? So I'm telling you, like, if you call up your conventional lenders, you have a good relationship with any of them, and you ask them, hey, if you ever get somebody that doesn't qualify or whatever, if it's everything's above board, and if you get approval from your manager or your business or whatever, go ahead and refer them to us. We can have a conversation about why they didn't get approved or what they're actually looking for. Because sometimes if it's an upsizing situation and they're like, well, yeah, we can't get into that new house, so we'll just stay put, but all is good. Those aren't the kind of people we're looking for. We're looking for the people that are like, oh no, we can't get qualified, but we got a bad situation here. We need to sell.
This is you cashing in on your network capital.
Yes.
It's time to go reach out to your lenders and your friends. Hey, if there's anybody in tough times, let us know. We're here to help. That's exactly what I love that. I love that.
Disaster cleanup too, or really contractors in general. Like, what happens when you get called, when a disaster cleanup person gets called somewhere? Something bad has happened in the property, right? Or your contractors or your remediation companies. These are all lead sources that people don't really think about, that are fantastic avenues to find some kind of deal. Probate attorneys too, or just attorneys in general, right? If someone has an inherited property and they didn't actually set it up in a trust and they don't have a will, that happens all the time. So then the property has to go through probate to determine who are the rightful heirs to receive proceeds from that sale. So those can be very messy situations, especially if like the next of kin are out of state and, hey, mom was a hoarder, and there's a lot of that happens. And the probate attorneys are like, I have no idea what to do with this besides the legal paperwork. They're looking for people that are problem solvers that can help people through that with those properties. All right. And number 10 is going to be paid marketing. The reason that I kept this at number 10 is because not a lot of us have a huge marketing budget, right? So in order to get leads, in order to get deals, you either have to have time or money. I didn't have much money, so I had time, right? I don't have a marketing budget like a Zillow or Redfin or these other companies. So, but at the same time, paying for leads can be incredibly lucrative because they're inbound leads, which means like examples of paid marketing that we do. TV commercials. I don't know if anyone has seen it. Don't make fun of me if you've seen it. Google pay-per-click. You can do SEO on your website, search engine optimization. You can do direct mail. You can do pay-per-lead services. You can do radio. There's a few others out there that are inbound, but they're more expensive, right? One piece of mail times a few thousand is a lot. Right now, TV commercials can be very expensive. I think our budget for TV is like 12,000 or 13,000 a month for TV commercials. So it's not cheap. But when somebody sees that, the only people that are calling off that are motivated right away. So, and I've talked about this at a prior event, but if you're doing paid marketing and you're missing phone calls from sellers that are reaching out, those are expensive phone calls to miss. That can be $300 a missed call, $500 a missed call, $1,000 a missed call. You have to either be the person that's on 24/7 to answer those or have a team that's set up to be able to answer those live calls. But those inbound channels are dynamite, right? People don't Google need to sell my home fast for cash or sell fast Boise, right? Unless they have something going on that they need addressed.
Is paid marketing quantitative? Meaning, just like your no example earlier, you knew that at 450 no's you were going to deal. Is it like paid clicks for Google? Is it quantitative?
Absolutely, yeah. So for us, we're closing about 1 in 18 pay-per-click leads. We're closing 1 in about every 10 to 12 TV leads. We're closing 1 in about every 23 to 25 pay-per-lead. Let's see, website isn't as many leads. Trying to think what other channels. We've done direct mail in the past. We're not doing a ton of that now, but when we were doing it, it was about 1 in every 25 to 30 leads equals a deal. So that's going to be far less than your outbound channels like cold calling or texting or some of these other ways to get deals, because those are like 1 in every 40 to 75 leads is a deal, right? Because you're cold prospecting. These aren't people that sought you out. You're trying to gather information, right? But they're cheaper. It only costs you your time, right? So you got to decide which one is it going to be? What is the way that I'm going to generate leads? Because ultimately, over all the top 10 ways that we just talked about to find creative finance deals, you really have to either have money or time.
I like how going from 1 to 10 as people apply these to themselves. It's like a time money scale.
Yep.
You've got all the time and no money. And as you work up the 10 ways, it starts to translate to where, you can start buying some of your time back. And then ultimately, now you have the most amount of time that you can put forth towards this because you bought it all back to continue to grow your business. I love that.
100%. And that's exactly why I say too, I think the best way are those outbound channels to learn. It doesn't cost you anything to learn. If you're paying for direct mail and you're getting a call and it's like, a $500 call and you don't know what to say, you don't know the right questions to ask, those are going to be expensive lessons to learn, right?
And you're not networking either.
Right.
If you're just getting on Google to do paid ads, you're not networking with people like you or people in your community to learn more ways of doing things and how to take actionable steps.
Yep. So I think, the big thing, like, if you want to get creative finance deals, really all of these top 10 reasons work. That's the thing. They all work. So you just have to pick one that works for you, preferably one, and just commit to it. Just commit to it and see what happens. And when I mean commit to it, I don't mean, I'm going to try that for a couple months. That's the wrong mindset. That goes back into number 1 that we were talking about. That's the wrong mindset to think, I'm going to try this for a couple months and see if it works. You're going to say, I'm going to commit to this channel until it works. I'm going to do the driving for dollars until it works. I don't care if it takes a week. I don't care if it takes a year. That's the mindset you got to have, and all of them will work.
Love it. Okay, so I know this show is a lot about finding creative deals.
Yep.
Okay, and this is awesome because nobody knows where to begin. But I want to walk through a little exercise with you.
Let's do it.
On your first creative finance deal you closed. Okay, so implementing these 10 steps, how long did it take you to go from day 1 to closing your first deal? Do you remember? The thousands of calls later.
Gosh, it took me 8 months to get my first off-market deal.
Okay.
But I was doing it part-time.
Sure.
I was doing it 5 or 10 hours a week only as an engineer. And that was a cash deal.
That's a lot of time. 5 hours a week as an engineer?
It is. And we we could dive into the layers behind that, but the reason for that, if there's anyone listening that has familiarity with sales, or maybe you don't know how sales pipelines work, but like really that first 8 months or 10 months, however many months, you're building up your lead pipeline, right? And so you're starting from zero, and you have to. Most people are not going to want to sell you their house the first or second conversation you have with them. It's the biggest, for a lot of people, it's the biggest decision they're going to make in their life. So these are long-term relationships. Like we got a property under contract about a month ago or 2 months ago that was 3 years old, a lead that was 3 years in our database that we had talked to the guy probably 80 times, right, in 3 years. So
it takes a long time to build your pipeline is what you're saying.
It takes
a very long time.
It takes a long time to build your pipeline. So it might take you the 8 months to get your first deal or whatever.
Yeah.
But then it might take you only 1 month to get the second deal after that.
Yeah.
And then the month after that, you might get 2 deals in that month. So there's an exponential effect to this.
Sure.
It's not linear. It's not like it's going to take you another 8 months to get the second deal. It doesn't work like that.
But which is why you have to have the consistency to keep going.
Exactly.
Okay, so it took you 8 months just to even get your first deal.
Yeah.
Now, I don't want to talk about terms because we could have a whole nother podcast about terms, but let's, hypothetically speaking, you and the seller, you agreed on terms. It's a win-win situation. What do you do from here? How do you make this happen? Like, if I'm on the phone calling and this person says, yes, I want to sell my house. What do you do next? I'll send you over a letter.
Yeah. Okay. So this is going to vary greatly depending on if you're working with a team or you're working with yourself. But for us,
you're working with yourself in this example.
Okay. I'm working with myself. I don't care about what price they want. And I know that's going to blow people's minds.
Yep.
You don't care about price? What do you mean? That's the most important thing. Wrong. The most important thing to people that have a problem is their timeline and what their motivation is. It's not the price. Timeline and motivation drive the sale of a home for people that would sell at a discount, not price. So we have to be careful about putting our head into a seller's head and our situation. Why in the world would anyone ever sell a property at a discount? Well, you wouldn't unless you needed to, right? Unless you were in that kind of a situation. So my first few questions are going to be, okay, great. Perfect. What's your rough timeline to sell it? What even has you considering selling right now? Okay, got it. And, have you thought about listing the property? With the holidays coming up, would you want to sell before or after the holidays? Now, I'm not even asking them about the condition of the property, because sellers want to talk about condition and price because it's safe to them. They don't then have to divulge what's really going on in their situation. So they have their guard up when you first talk to them. The people that do it wrong ask about price right away. And there's this, I'm an investor. Yep. I have to make a profit. You want over market. You want double Zillow price, right? We hear that all the time, right? You want double Zillow price. I can't tell you how many people have said they wanted $600K for their property, and then we'll get it under contract at $320. Seriously. It's because motivation and timeline drive decision-making. So all my questions are going to be about timeline and about the motivation and about their situation. And then once I've discovered what their actual situation is, I'm going to low anchor on some kind of a cash number. So I'm going to say, okay, gosh, here are your options. You could list it. And gosh, if it's fixed up or you want to do the work yourself, or you're not in a rush or you don't really need to sell this, you should list it with an agent. That's going to be the way to get you your top dollar. It gets the most eyeballs, it gets the most people on it. Perfect. So that's a great solution for you. If not, and you really need the money now, or you don't want to do work or whatever, okay, well then, we're going to give you probably, and this is the right way to do it, you have to third person cash offer. You're not going to say, I think in the cash range, we're going to be here. You don't want to say, because people will get offended by that, right? This is their pride and joy, guys. This is not.
It's one of most people, it's their biggest asset.
Yes, absolutely.
That they spent years in.
Absolutely. So you don't want to say, hey, this is what we could do for you on a cash offer. You want to say, it looks like other investors are buying properties like this for cash at auction in the blank to blank range. It looks like other investors are buying properties for cash at auction in the blank to blank range. And then shut up. Do not fill in the gaps. Do not say anything until you get some kind of reaction, because they're most likely going to go, oh, I could never sell it for that. Yeah, that's no way. Or, right? Well, Mr. Seller, I didn't say that that's what we could offer. I'm just telling you that's what other investors could pay. So it sounds like, gosh, if somebody offered you that, I mean, what would you say?
I'm never going for that.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So if you're never going for that, then I'm going to say, okay, perfect. So what's important to you in this transaction?
Well, I want the highest dollar for my home. I've lived here for 20 years. It's worth a lot to me.
Okay, perfect. So what do you think is important to you? I know this is a personal question, but what are you going to do with the funds after you close? Are you going to go buy something else, or?
Well, I've got a lot of loans to pay off because I took equity out of my home, but I also want to buy a home, so I need top dollar.
Okay, so have you thought about listing it? It seems like you need top dollar.
Well, I did, but the listing said that I wasn't going to, my agent said that it wasn't worth as much as I know it's worth.
We're seeing a lot of that right now. I mean, gosh, have you thought about working with a different agent, or?
Well, I don't know a lot about real estate, and I just called up the only person I knew, a friend of a friend, and he wouldn't even take my home because he was afraid of offending me.
Okay.
I don't know what my options are.
Okay, got it. So I'm sure you've been probably lowballed by all those annoying cash offer guys that, cold call you and say, hey, you should sell your property for pennies.
That's all I get.
Okay, that's annoying. That's the worst. That's the worst. And usually I'm going to get a chuckle there, right? Right.
Yep.
And build some rapport and some emotional release. Yeah.
Well, you really understand my situation.
Yeah, exactly. That's what they're thinking, right? And so then I'm going to say, well, gosh, what if there was a way to make you way more money over time?
Well, how could you do that?
Well, I guess I'm not sure if this would work for you, because it sounds like you need some of the funds to maybe buy another property. So if that's the case, then I think you would have to cash out fully to be able to do that. But, maybe if you have another place to go, or if you're not against renting a property, we could make payments to you over time, and we could get you a way higher price than anyone could pay in cash.
Well, I only need $30,000.
Oh, you only need $30,000. Okay, great. So I guess what would that look like?
If you could, it's a good question. I don't know, because I've not been in this situation, but I know a lot of sellers personally. I'm separating myself from this. They always let it slip in these conversations.
100%, yeah.
Because, you're engaging with them emotionally.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. But it's all about, there's a reason why I didn't just go right into terms.
Yep.
There's a reason why I said, have you thought about listing it? Have you thought about calling another agent? Why is it important to you? These are all disarming the seller so that I can actually get to the truth. If I go right into terms and I don't know their seller's situation, they're going to say, to hell with you, get lost. Like, you don't get me. You're not listening to me. That's what they're going to feel.
Yep.
So we have to connect with them on a deeper level. And then if you're saying you only need 30K, I'm going to say, okay, tell me about why it's 30K. Right. And they're going to say, well, I got to pay $10,000 on a credit card bill, and we need maybe a little bit of money to move. And I got some personal belongings in here that might need to go to junk. And then I got to get, first and last month's rent. And then you're probably going to have an objection about, like, well, I really want to buy another home. And I can tell you 9 times out of 10 with people that still have that glimmer of hope that they're going to buy another home, they haven't had enough pain yet. So that, like I said in the beginning, only 1 out of every 6 to 8 seller appointments, we're getting something under contract. What's happening the other 5, 6, 7 times? We're not getting it.
Exactly.
Right. So then I'm going to set an action step for you, and I'm going to say, well, it sounds like you're saying you need 30K, but you're not really sure if you actually want to buy a new house. Maybe you should talk to your family about it, and we should talk on Monday at 4 p.m. about what you guys talked about and what your future looks like. That's a good time to call timeout. Hey, let's reset. Because if they don't really know what you want and you're pushing for the close and to get pen to paper right there, you're not going to, right?
I like that
They're
because at
confused.
this point in time, they want to exit the conversation because they've divulged the information and they don't want to make a decision right then and there. So you allow them the time they need to make the decision because that's what they're all going to say anyway. Well, I got to talk to my wife about it. Well, I got to talk to the other siblings about it. Well, I got to, they're going to come up with some excuse. So you label the situation
Yep.
and disarm it
Yep.
and give them the room that they need.
Well, and there's levels to this too, right? So actually a part of our sales process is that within the first 5 minutes of meeting with somebody, and it actually starts before the appointment when we're talking to them on the phone. Hey, is there anybody else that could factor into the decision that needs to be there? And sometimes you'll get, well, yeah, my wife. So then we have to make sure that all decision makers are present for this appointment. Now, if they say that's none of your business, then we got to story tell a little bit. Well, gosh, we met with Betty a couple weeks ago, and she told us the same thing, and she said she just wanted to meet, and she's the only decision maker. But what she didn't tell us is that her husband and son found out that we met with her, and guess what kind of angry phone call we got because they thought that we were trying to take advantage of her because they weren't included, right? So that's why within the first, and this is, I'm happy to, people DM me or call me and go through this because there are layers to this sales training and sales process, and having thousands of conversations to really understand like the right questions and right things to ask. But within the first 5 minutes of that appointment, we're asking, hey, is it okay? Some of the questions we're about to ask might be personal. Is that okay with you? In order to even see, because we're not the right fit for most people or for a lot of people. So, in order for us to even see if we're the right fit, we're going to have to ask you some personal questions. Is that okay? Most people are going to say yes, right?
Yeah.
Because you wouldn't lie to a doctor. If you went into a doctor and they were like, hey, what's wrong? What's going on? Right? A doctor is going to be able to properly diagnose you so that they can get you healthy. That is the kind of doctor-patient relationship that we want to have with the seller. Because truthfully, we can't, until we identify what their solution is, we don't know what's going to work best for them.
Yeah, and they don't want to divulge it at first either. You have to work with them and empathize with their situation. Not sympathize, but at least empathize with their situation so you can help them.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Listen.
Absolutely. And it's hard when you're talking to people in distress because, we've seen it all. Suicide, divorce, hoarding, really deep emotional baggage of people that have all kinds of family issues, really deep financial pain. So you are a psychologist out in the field trying to peel back a few of these layers and trying to be their advocate and their friend. So that this really goes back to like taking the long view of things. The purpose of why we have that first 5 minutes of the appointment script is so that we can identify those objections early on in the appointment. And so if they're like, well, no, I'm not going to answer the personal questions. Okay, gosh, well, I don't even know how we know if we'll be able to help you then. Well, I just want an offer. Well, if you just want an offer, then maybe you should probably list it for sale by owner or list it with an agent, because then you're probably going to get a lot of calls and a lot of people interested, and you might get multiple offers. So, but you haven't done that yet. Can you tell me why?
I think this is why it's so important to not skip any of the steps either. Because when you have somebody that comes up that needs, a doctor's advice, for example, someone who's experienced and done this a lot, you have to come up with the right answer and solution. It might be the best deal of your life, but if you don't know how to properly diagnose their problem or their pain, you'll never get to a solution that helps them, that helps everybody at the same time.
Yep. And now, and we can wrap up this thought, but I don't want people to confuse that with a lack of urgency. So time kills all deals, right? So if you can think about a time in your life when you've had either some kind of emotional weight on your shoulders about a decision. Maybe it was a breakup. Maybe it was a financial decision. Maybe you got let go from a job, or maybe you knew you needed to have a difficult conversation, right? If you can place yourself in that kind of frame of mind, then you understand a little bit more what people are going through. And so when people get really mustered up to have the courage in that moment, that's when they're at their emotional high. That's when they're most able to make a decision. If they don't do it then, they'll crawl right back down in their hole. And so we see that all the time, where if somebody isn't really willing to come to reality, or like, well, I can fix this problem. They don't. And then they crawl back into their hole. And so, yes, we give people time, of course, if it's not the right time to make a decision for them, but we follow up like no other. If this is somebody in a bad situation, they're going to make a decision. It might not be till next year. It might not be today. It might be next year, or it could be any day in between then, because they're one health issue, one complication away from, you know what, that's it. I'm done. I'm ready to sell. So that's why follow-up is absolutely critical. And I don't mean just like calling them once a week. If it's a hot lead, we're calling them and texting them multiple times a day to seeing what's going on.
Some of these people probably want somebody to talk to.
Yeah, there's a lot of that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that. But if you can be that ear for them, right? They don't have anybody to talk them through this stuff, and know that whoever's meeting with them is actually going to bring them the right solution for them. The immediate, and this is the objection that we have to all overcome as investors, a part of this community, is investor is associated with, they're going to take advantage of me. Right?
Greed.
Yes.
Screw those guys.
Exactly. The poor and middle class, they're just taking advantage of everybody, right? So we have to break that down. And the way we do that is by breaking that barrier, that sales friction, that guard that they have up, by saying, we might not be the right fit for you, but I'm going to help you regardless.
Yeah.
And if you say that right away, like literally, hey Matt, I'm Ryan. Gosh, it's great to meet with you. Thanks for inviting me into your home. We're not the right fit for everybody here, but my promise to you today is that we're going to help you regardless.
Who doesn't want to have a conversation after that?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. So I know we could do a whole nother podcast on like specifically what's in our sales script, what questions to ask when a seller says this, what kind of role playing to do. But hopefully that gives the listeners at least a few tips to run with.
Something we don't talk about a lot is how to get deals and leads to begin with. I know a lot of people talk about creative finance deals and how to get terms and how to negotiate interest rates and timelines and balloon payments and going, to title company to get contracts signed and how to do long-term escrow. But not often you get to hear about what are some of the tactics and how you can get these leads. So I really appreciate you walking through everybody that on this.
Absolutely. And guys, this is an open invitation. You can reach me at Weimer Investments on Instagram. My email is ryan@offernowidaho.com. My personal cell number I'll actually give out on the show. It's 303-968-0487. If you guys have any questions about any part of this, you maybe have a seller and you don't know what to do with the situation, go take action. Don't be in analysis paralysis. Go take action, create some problems, and then contact me with those problems. I will help you through it personally.
He means this too.
Yes.
He loves this stuff. He's very passionate about it, and he loves walking through these things. It's like you get fuel from it.
Yeah.
I know the feeling.
Absolutely. It brings me so much energy because my engineer brain, I get to be a problem solver, and then helping people, I get to have meaningful impact. And then I also get to work towards financial freedom. It's like the trifecta. It's amazing.
It's your why.
Yes.
That's your pyramid right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I love it. Ryan, thanks for coming on today. But before we go, I do have one question. And I know the listeners are dying to know. But in your opinion, what's one actionable item that they can take today that will get them closer to their goals tomorrow?
One thing. I think people need to sit down, and I think they really need to write out what their why is. I think if you have pain, that's honestly a more powerful short-term motivator is pain. If you have pain, use that, right? If you got let go from a job, if you're in between things, use that. If you're not, you're in a stable position, you really have to sit down and write down what your why is. Because if you don't, then you're not going to connect your why to your daily actions. and it's going to feel like there's no connection with why am I doing this. And so yeah, there has to be a deeper level of understanding and fulfillment that comes from you cold calling for the first time when you've never done a cold call in your life. Like there has to be a reason why you actually want to be crazy enough to do that, right? So I think it's really just sitting down with you or your spouse and going through a 15 to 30 minute exercise, and it might turn into more than that, about what is your why. And then part 2 of that is, where do you want to be in a year? Like, what are your year goals?
Setting goals is huge.
Yep.
It's one of the biggest things you can do.
Yep. But I think most people go through life and they haven't really taken the time to sit down and think, what do I want?
Isn't that crazy? Yeah.
And the reason why, though, is because going through that exercise makes you vulnerable, and you have to get real with yourself. Because most of the time, what you want, it means if you have to come face to face with that, am I giving up on my dreams? If I write this down on paper, it becomes real. And if I now don't take action towards that, I'm giving up on my dreams. That is literally why people have this friction to doing that, and they don't do it. So we got to bust through that, because
I love it.
We are the Boise Ring community. So we are going to live life on our terms the way we want to.
Yeah, and be true go-givers and help the people around us to achieve their goals and their whys.
Absolutely.
I love it.
Yep.
Awesome, Ryan. Hey, thank you so much for coming on today. You already told people how they can reach you, but we'll have it in the show notes regardless. And I look forward to having you back on. That was enjoyable. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we're going to deep dive all kinds of fun stuff. So thanks for having me.